created Ballet Help Desk as the resource we wish we had when our kids were going through ballet training. Now we've got some exciting news. For a while, many of you have asked for an ad free option, and we've been listening. We are thrilled to introduce the Ballet Help Desk Backstage Pass on Patreon. With your subscription, you'll get every episode ad free. The full back catalog, remastered with higher quality audio, and early access to the episodes before they are released publicly. As our Patreon community grows, we'll be adding new ways for you to connect more deeply with the podcast and the Ballet Help Desk community. Subscribe today. See you backstage. Hi, folks. Welcome back to Hashtag No Thirds. Fran, welcome back. It's been a minute.
Woo-hoo! It has been a minute. It's been a whole summer.
It has been a whole summer, and I know I've seen your Instagram. You guys have been all over the place.
Really
Catch us up. What's been up with you since we talked to you
and
last? Gosh, when was it? March?
been a while. Crazy summer. Oh, tiny. Like I think Lauren and Lucy and I went to Lake Michigan for like 48 hours
Ooh,
for a
that's
little
fun.
ski, which is awesome, by the way. I think it was St. Joseph. That place is awesome. Silver Beach or something like that. It was freaking great. We're definitely going back. But we've been going around, Lauren and I, teaching at a few different places over the summer. She went a couple places on her own. I went a couple places on my own, and we went a couple places together, which was really fun. And then we wrapped up our season last year with Indie Ballet, which is a crazy season. And I would just be remiss if I didn't give a massive shout out to the dancers of Indie Ballet who kicked so much butt and poured their heart and soul and everything under some fairly not ideal circumstances with our leadership change stuff. And they just kept on chugging and took everything in stride and danced so beautifully and so free. So we wrapped that up. And then now, in my capacity as a rehearsal director, off season is not exactly off. So it's like the stuff in the studio kind of goes away. And then there's all this other stuff for planning the next year that has to get done, and mostly by other people. I won't pretend that like I have to be the one doing all of the really hard work for that, but there's a heck of a lot to be done to run a company while the dancers aren't in the studio. But yesterday, the dancers got back in the studio. We all got back to it, so the fun stuff is back in the house.
I'm really excited to see what Indie Ballet does this season. It's going to be exciting.
We have a really great season, actually. I know everyone always wants to do that as a pitch, but I mean it. We have a very nice season plan. We have some wonderful works. We got approved to do some really nice ballets from the Balanchine Trust, and that's really nice. We're going to be doing Victoria Morgan's Cinderella, which is going to rock. It's going to be huge for us. And I'm making another ballet right now. There's some more stuff coming in the later in the year. It's going to be a blast. I think it's going to be the best season since I've been here in terms of the caliber of ballets that we're getting. It's wonderful. So
That's really exciting. And I
yeah.
mean, you have some other family news. Lauren is no longer with Indie Ballet.
Lauren is no longer with Indie Ballet. Lauren has gotten her bucket list job. Lauren is a visiting associate professor at Indiana University, the place that
Amazing.
saved her. We always say that the IU is the best ballet department in the country, and their faculty is absolutely amazing. She went through a long interview process, and thankfully they made the right choice. It's such a wonderful place, and it's such a well run institution. Sarah Roth, I think, it is hard for me to think of someone that I respect more than Sarah Roth. She's phenomenal. I think she's incredibly intelligent and well measured and experienced and runs such a freaking awesome program. And Lauren can't wait to be a part of it. So she technically started August 1st, but the students aren't back for like a few weeks. So getting all our ducks in a row, as proud as I have been on this podcast many, many times of my wife, this is a big one. She nailed it, and it's huge for our family. So massive accomplishment for her, and congratulations, my love.
What lucky students to be able to have that roster of teachers is just extraordinary. And Lauren is such an add value. So, and I'm sure she's just going to be thrilled to be back at the IU campus because she just speaks
Yeah.
of it so fondly.
Yeah, it's amazing. And we still have like some of our students from different places and virtual students are there at IU, and some of them still do lessons with us every so often, and they're busting. They couldn't be happier that she's coming. So good choice, Sarah and IU. Way to go. Shows well. Yeah, pretty darn cool. It's awesome.
It's
So
very, very exciting. So tell us about some of the places that you went and taught this summer.
well, there's a yearly teaching gig that I do in Texas that is wonderful at Texas Ballet Theater. They always have me out and they're wonderful. And I teach their company and their students while I'm there, which is very nice. Lauren and I went twice to Georgia, which was really great. Two different schools in Georgia that we went and taught for. We really like Georgia.
Okay,
I,
what do you like
I
about Georgia?
I like the Southern hospitality. I like their good like, their kids in general are just so well-mannered. They all say "sir" and "ma'am" and are just wonderful. So it's nice. They're, not that other places aren't. It's just it's a standout in a positive way when you go to Georgia that their children are still brought up in a way that is, like, extra respectful. It's nice.
So that actually brings something up that's interesting. Kids are going back into the studio. It's kind of people are starting to think about back to school. And I think it's interesting that you said, like, wow, these kids are super polite. As kids are going back into the studio, do you have some tips or like things to remember from the perspective of the person that's at the front of the room teaching all these kids about how you want to think about conducting yourself in class from your perspective?
Yeah, well, okay.
Was
Well,
that too blunt?
no, no, no,
Okay,
no. I think
okay.
it's a good question and worth being blunt, and then I'll probably be blunt because I'm usually blunt. Yeah, look, being polite costs you nothing and could potentially gain you everything. So being polite and respectful should be the starting point. That's the jump off. You know what I mean? Like because I suppose it's a little early in the pod to go negative right away, but like, how about another one of Fran's tips? Ditch the freaking Gen Z stare. It's not new, and it's
Okay,
always
Kate,
been.
What is the Gen
what
Z
what
stare?
is the Gen Z stare? I've never even
Well,
heard of that.
this is a thing that I saw, like, a thing that where bosses and employers, like millennials and stuff, are reporting this, that they're seeing this more and more often, and I am seeing it in the dance studio, which is really weird because it's bananas rude. You will address a student directly and very nicely and politely and respectfully give them a correction, and they will just stare at you.
Seriously?
Is there like hip and attitude and like shoulders and like
Uh-huh.
is there like contempt or disdain in this?
There's I feel there's contempt and disdain in it because it's bananas rude to just stand and stare at someone. The thing you're supposed to do, and we all know it when you get a correction, is to immediately try the step again and try to apply the correction. So beyond it being rude in a conversation. If you guys were talking to me and you asked me a question, I just went, eventually you'd be like, dude, are you going to answer? Or you would ask it again. And sometimes you're giving them a correction multiple times in a row and they still just kind of stand and stare at you. And then you
So have
go,
you
"Go try it." And you try and say that as nicely as you can, but when there's I don't know, a 12-year-old just standing there like, "I'll think about it." And you're like, "Well, no, go do it. Don't be rude." Like, I wasn't rude to you for giving you a correction. That was actually a gift.
is that
You
something
know, I
you've
don't
seen change over the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years? Is that something you've noticed that is increased in frequency, or is it like just every year there's some kids that just really don't have great manners?
every year that I mean, we've talked about it on the pod plenty of times. Every year there are always some punks. I think that Gen Z stare thing isn't particular. Like I remember kind of trying that and people calling me on it. Like when I was younger, I'm like, don't just stand and stare at me. That's rude. If my dad asked me a question and we didn't answer immediately, man, like no, absolutely not. You do not just stand and stare at my father. And you were at much bigger trouble if you tried it on mom and dad. That's not nice behavior to just stand and stare at somebody when they've asked you a question or you're in a conversation or you have been given a correction in the studio. It implies that rather than taking the correction and going and giving it a shot, you're deciding whether or not you're going to take that correction at all. And the flaw there might be, well, why would I give you a correction that wasn't intended to help you? To the young folks that might be sitting there thinking like, oh, maybe I do that. And yeah, I definitely like think about my correction before I apply it. Thinking about it is good. Deciding whether or not you're going to try the correction at all, no good. Disrespectful. Because from my perspective, you did a step. I say, hey, if you use your inner thigh on your standing leg and really straighten your knee, it will look better and be better. It'll be a stronger turn. Go give it a shot. And then you just sort of stare at me and like, they're like considering where they're like, the question in my mind is, why are you not trying it right away? Why are you considering whether or not you will take that correction? Why would I give you a correction if it wouldn't help? You know, if I encounter a student like that, I give them a grace period for a while. In my opinion, it's a while. To them, it might be relatively quickly before I address it, right? Because it did happen recently where I addressed a student that I had been teaching for about 3 days. I was going to be teaching this student for 4 days, and I tolerated it for two and a half. And sort of in the middle of the lesson on the third, I was like, "What's going on? Do you not agree with the correction I gave you?" And they were like, "No, I don't." And I was like, "I don't care. You should do it anyway."
So
And you're
this
like,
student
"Why?" I was
really
like, "Well,
said
'cause
that
you're
this
12
the
and I'm
student
40."
so are you
Sorry, go
saying
ahead.
the student didn't agree with your correction?
Yeah.
And so how do you get to that place? Like as a student, how do you not agree with a teacher when that teacher's been teaching for a bazillion years?
And I want to differentiate the difference between like somebody that's like 17 or 18 is in like a finishing year, right? And it's like they get a correction, sometimes it's stylistic or whatever, right? And they
Mhm.
try it on their body or they think about it and they're like, that might not work for me, but you still try it.
I would ask what her timeline is on that, because a fair few of my corrections are not meant to make you better right now, they're meant to make you better eventually. You're gonna have to work at this, you know? So, like, if it's something like, I don't know, an example might be a common, disagreement in the ballet world, if you will, is a classical versus neoclassical allongé fourth for an onde or pirouette, right? Where some people like this one and some people like that one. And if you're in the Balanchine ballet where the allongé fourth is more appropriate and you should dance it that way because that's the way the ballet is intended, or the way the stager wants you to dance it, or the director or whoever it is that's coaching you, doing it one time will probably feel awful. And 2 through 10 probably still awful. But we've got 3 weeks, so keep at it and let's see if you can get this because stylistically this fits here. So, and also definitely differentiating between professionals and pre-professionals and kids, you know what I mean? But even still, as you go up that ladder, do you have more decision making over your own sort of technique and stuff? Yes, you should, but also there's a certain point too where like I primarily now work with professionals. And I don't exactly get the Gen Z stare but I do sometimes get a little bit of pushback on like, why don't you try it this way? I'm like, I don't know. Like, well, then don't. If I'm coaching you to sort of trying to make you better in this ballet in this piece, and I have something to say to you, sometimes I'm trying to figure something out with you. Like it depends. Like, and if it's a coaching situation where I'm working with say two principals and we're looking at a step that's been, I don't know, dogging us for a couple weeks and we've been trying something a certain way like 5 days in a row and we're both just looking at each other and like it ain't working, let's change course, we'll try something different, right? That is and if we're like we're doing something where it's a character and an interpretation or something like that, that is definitely, you know, a professional should have some autonomy in being able to make their decisions that way, and you as a coach and a ballet master rehearsal director should be able to recognize and not be so egotistically fragile that them having an opinion breaks down your correction, different story. But sort of the younger they go on the spectrum in the professional ballet world as well, like probably the more you should just take the correction and run, right? And
Yes.
always you should, what you're saying is very definitely true. You should always just go and try it immediately. Lauren took every correction she ever got instantly, immediately, applied it immediately. The best person I've ever seen in my professional life at taking and making corrections was Lauren Bailey Bad, man. She was a master at instantly applying corrections. I took a while, and mine was more because I forgot, but also within that, it wasn't a direct disrespect of them, but it was sort of a passive disrespect because like I would be doing what I was thinking about, and then if I remembered, I would do the correction. Whereas Lauren just did the correction first. That was her primary goal. And mine was like my thing, then the correction.
And now a brief pause to hear a word from our sponsors.
While you're back to school shopping, picking up backpacks and new ballet flats, don't forget to pick up our corrections journal. If your dancer is looking to put their right foot forward this year, think about picking up one of our corrections journal. It was made by dancers for dancers. Lots of space to write, lots of space to write corrections, set intention, and set bigger and smaller goals to help your dancer move forward and have the best year yet. So head on over to our website and find out all our details and check out all of our cute covers. There's something for everyone. So buy yours today.
And back to the episode.
But
Okay, so then
also,
can you break down for parents what the difference is and for dancers and to understand why applying that correction right away is important? Why that matters? Like, what does that tell you as someone in the front of the room when they are deciding whether or not they want to even try it?
well, from the positive and from the positive perspective and with the student, if you go and try it, it means that you are willing, that you're paying attention, that you're trying to get better, that you are willing to learn something new, that your cup is not already full. And the opposite would be the opposite, right? It would be, well, you don't have anything to teach me because I already know everything. Like your corrections are open to my approval or disapproval. That's like, well, oh, you're the editor. Like, I don't- but I don't think you are. You're a 12-year-old and I'm a 46-year-old. I'm facing this way and you're facing that way. I'm in the front of the room and you're the student. You should try what I ask you to do because what I ask you to do, right or wrong aside, what I ask you to do is based on vastly more experience than you could possibly have. Well, as a student recently, I actually did say to them as nicely as I could, I was 12 once. I would venture a guess that I knew at that point in time about everything you know or you think you know right now. And I thought I knew an awful lot when I was 12. And then I got to a different school and realized I knew nothing. And then I was there for a couple of years and I thought I knew everything again. And then I got into Pennsylvania Ballet at 17 and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. None. I do not know what I'm doing at all. A question for a let's just go with that 12-year-old that's staring blankly at a teacher, not going and applying their correction. Based on what knowledge and experience do you have the right to just stand and rudely stare at the teacher? Whether the teacher is nice or you like them or not, or they have a track record of producing professional ballet dancers or not, the person in the front of the room, on average, generally speaking, the person in the front of the room has earned their way there. And
So can I ask you a question about that? With kids going back in soon, coming back from summer programs and then going back into their year-round studios. As a teacher, what are the things that you love to see from students when they first come in?
I mean, without making it a total like just smile and be happy all the time. And like a happy kid is wonderful to see. Someone that's smiling and happy to be there. Someone that's really concentrated and focused and is like the first one to give. Because I will also say, like, I give a lot of my corrections as a teacher to the group. I'll be talking to the group and I'll make eye contact with everybody and I'll pull someone forward to try something or things like that. But a lot of what I do as a teacher is focused on the entire group. So when I give a correction and I go practice, and you see that consistently that young lady is the first one to try every time. I will say for the benefit of the students, it's hard to know. Like sometimes your teacher will be giving you a long-winded explanation of something. I do that a lot, and they kind of want to get to it and try it, but they don't want to be rude and start going while your teacher's talk, right? And then certain other teachers are just like, "Why aren't you practicing this while I'm talking?" So it's hard. You have to know your teacher a little bit. But generally speaking, like if they give you a correction, they intend you to go and start practicing it right away. That shows me that you are engaged, that you're listening, that you respect me enough to go ahead and try what I asked you to just try. And because we are all in the ballet world a little bit egomaniacs, if you don't show me that proper respect, my ego flares up and I go, oh, who does this kid think they are? I temper that all the time, but it happens. If you're standing in a room with a 12-year-old that staring at you and doesn't think you have any idea what you're talking about. Just my man, that little devil on my shoulder just starts with, who does this kid think she is? You better chat with him. You know what I mean? Like, so like, I can be really hard and tough on my students. That little devil will whisper to me too that like, you're trying so hard to help her. Like you're being so great to her. You're being so nice to her and she's treating you like this. And I'm just like, shush, shush. But also, hey, pay attention and go try. It's weird. Like if your teacher ever has to tell you to go try the correction, that's a problem. If they give you a correction and then you're standing there and they go try, just know in that moment you've messed up and they're a little pissed.
I think that that's helpful. And lots of times you hear parents complain about, well, the teacher ignores my dancer and they don't they don't give them anything. And I kind of wonder sometimes as teachers, do you reach a point where maybe you just stop pouring into a student because they're not receiving.
Yes. Want me to elaborate? No.
I would love for you to elaborate.
We're human. It's that much more gratifying if you give a correction and someone responds positively and tries it. You know what I mean? No one likes to be disrespected, students or teachers. And teachers are probably going to be the ones with the larger egos and a longer list of accomplishments that they want to hang everything on. I mean, the short answer is yes. Like if I give someone corrections multiple times in a row and they ignore it, then fine. Then I will put my efforts where it's being used. I mean, it's if you just keep pouring tea into a full cup, like you should probably stop pouring tea there. It's a waste at a certain point. And it's not calling that kid a waste. It's just like if you're not going to take this correction, then I will give it to someone who will because I don't want to waste my time or yours or theirs. Because in that moment too, it's like, okay, well, you haven't earned a further correction and that person has. That person took your correction more than you did, then they get the next one. Also sometimes like I also will say there are definitely teachers that have their favorites and play those little games. We've talked about on this pod about that plenty of times. But also I've broken it down for some of my students sometimes that like, look, there's a bit of a time crunch here, folks. We have an hour and a half class. We have 90 minutes. There are 30 of you. Let's say we have 30 kids in a class and there's a 90-minute class. If we are lucky and efficient, you should be spending half of the time, 45 minutes, dancing, just pure dancing, right? And that's if the teacher talks a lot like I do. We should still be spending half of that class dancing. So it's like we have 90 minutes, there's 30 of you. You think you're going to get 3 minutes each of individual attention. We've already cut that to a minute and a half if we're lucky. But it takes time for me to give the correction, right? And if we are in a class, well, here, hang on. Let me look at a file right here. This is a private lesson for an hour that I gave 2 days ago. And we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 exercises. And assuming each one of those exercises took a minute to a minute and a half to give, then there's another 20 minutes of our class gone. And we're down to 25 minutes. So we're now at under a minute of individual attention per kid, right? But then there's also random other times that like if you're not teaching with a live pianist where you have to find your music on your phone or do whatever, your CD, and there's tons of little things that take up time in class. And if your teacher then gives a lot of group corrections the way I do, if you get one individual correction from me in a class, that's probably a lot. If your teacher is like me and you were expecting a load of individual attention, you're probably going to be disappointed. And then maybe what needs to happen there is an adjustment to our expectations. Oh.
Yes. I just kept thinking expectation. Okay, let me ask you a question. Have you ever had a class where, like, the whole class, everyone is just applying every correction? Do you cry a little bit when that happens? Like
I mean, sometimes if so, sometimes there are some special classes where there's just a group of kids, and you know what? Honestly, for me, it's the ones that I got. It's the ones that took the most effort to turn were the ones for me. There was a particular class in Kansas City Ballet School that was, I think, the pre-pro level in the evening program. And when I first got there and started teaching them, I was different than any of their other teachers, and they were like, I don't know, dude." And like some of them had a bit of an attitude, but I kept at it and I'm stubborn about wanting to get people to get on board with what I want them to do because I believe in the way that I teach. So I kept at them and kept at them. And it was like, it took a few months and then they kind of got what I was trying to get them to do and kind of got more and more on board. And then it was like the next year after that, that there was this great group of kids that they worked their butts off for me every time I showed up. They listened, and they were older students too, and a few of them were genuinely brilliant, like academically, like eh, really brilliant young women who, in very real terms, were smarter than I was, except in this one little narrow arena. You know what I mean? So they were the kind of curious that would ask a lot of questions and probing questions about the way I wanted them to do something in the way that, like, we would talk about whether or not they agreed with it, and they would still freaking try it, because they had worked to a point where I respected them enough to go, "Do you guys not understand what I'm trying to do?" how I want you to do this stuff. They gave me this mug actually because apparently I said that to them enough. Just freaking do it, man. Like, because they would like but they were working really hard and they wanted to know what the intention was for the way that I would want them to do a step. And I would explain and explain until eventually I just said, just freaking do it, man. Go, just start trying. So yeah, sometimes when the class aligns correctly that way, it's great. And I looked forward to teaching that class. And you know who you are out there, and I miss you guys. So yeah, sometimes it really does work. And I think too, like if you use your manners properly and you are respectful, then the gateway to all of your teacher's knowledge is there because I wanted them to understand why I was having them do something. Like a prime example was like Kansas City Ballet School is a more classical school than I had taught for. And though I'm not really balancing, I'm definitely more balancing than most of the teachers there. So when I wanted them to turn from an allongé fourth so that they understood what this fourth was and why it was used and how, you know what I mean? There was pushback from that because like they were trained a different way. But I'm stubborn and they did try and it got to a point where they did understand it and they could become competent at that fourth even if they did the other one in everybody else's class all the time and they preferred it. Your respect can earn you the right to have a more open conversation with your teacher, and your respect and good manners will lead your teacher to be more generous. If you want the best out of your teachers, you have to give them your best. I think we've talked about that on this pod, and I told them that. That was one of the things that, like, in sort of establishing the right relationship with them, I told them one day, I was just like, I have to say, like, I don't particularly care if you guys like the things that I'm asking you to do right now. I just want you to try them. And I'm asking for a little bit of trust moving forward and a little bit of effort. And I promise on the other side, you'll have at least a better understanding. Even if you don't like, you'll understand this style of technique and be able to use it to your benefit. And then one of them at one point said something about this or that with like, I would like more individual corrections. And I remember turning to the entire class and telling them that none of them were entitled, in my opinion, to any individual corrections. And that if they wanted them, that they would have to earn them.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because, our kids have had teachers where they did give individual corrections to each student, and maybe not everybody got them every class. But then there were some teachers that only gave group corrections. And I think for some kids, that can be hard to, like, if you're getting group corrections, some kids are like, oh my God, they don't like me. They're not giving any individual corrections. I'm not being seen, whatever it is. And can you talk a little bit about those two different teaching philosophies? Because they feel very different to me.
Well, I would say, sorry, group versus individual. I think if you are mostly group corrections, I think it depends slightly on how you do them. I try and make a lot of eye contact with each individual student while I'm teaching to make sure that they all feel that I am talking to them individually, even if we're doing this as a group. And then once I explain sort of a correction the way I want it to do, or the way I want a certain muscle connection to happen, and then we all start trying. And when they're trying, then I'll sort of do individual corrections here and there. Right. But I do not believe that it's correct that every student in the class get the same number of individual corrections. I think that means they don't have to earn it. And I think you should have to earn it. I believe that wholeheartedly. I think that is 100% a part of your training. The idea that showing up is enough to earn what everybody else earns, absolutely not. That is not the world you were trying to enter. In the ballet world is, probably the only place if I have any expertise, it's there, but really the rest of the world too. I'm here now. Where's my trophy? I'd like my free everything. Well, no, kid, you got to go out and work for it. You got to go out and earn it. If you want to be a professional ballet dancer, it's only the top of the top and the best of the best that gets to do that at all. And then the hard work begins. If you want any kind of featured part or half the time, just to get yourself on stage in the freaking core. We have a series going right now that is like, it's 4 ballets and none of them are particularly large. Mine is the largest. We're trying to get everybody on stage, but it's a pure numbers thing that we don't necessarily. And we have this first show is one show, and then we're going to do this series again at a different time at a different place, and there will be more performances and more people will get to do more things. But it's like this season opener is one show of four not huge ballets. Three of them are quite small, and getting everybody on stage is just a numbers thing. If you want to dance in the core and get your butt on stage, that's hard. So the idea that, like, if the idea is we're giving a ballet class, no, we're not even going to go down that road. If the idea is that we are training them for a future in the ballet world, then it is not preparing them for the world that exists for them to automatically get the same number of corrections. That is a utopia that does not and will not exist. So if you want the best part in the company, you have to convince the director, as maybe as well as the staff. It depends on the director, whether or not they consult their staff with casting or not. You know what I mean? But like, if you want to be Cinderella, you have to convince the boss that you're Cinderella. You don't get to stand in the back of class and expect Cinderella to fall in your lap. You know what I mean? It's like, and there's nothing wrong with dancing in the back of the class, but the analogy that I'm going to hang back and I get it because everybody should get it. No, there's going to be one Cinderella. So if you want it, you better do something to make that person believe that you were the best option for that. And I think that should extend all the way down into our training with the class. And the problem there is that the teacher then has to be conscientious and fair with their distribution and make sure that it's not that if the students are earning or not earning those corrections, that you make those assessments fairly and generally emotion free and given the evidence of the kid in front of you. Because that can very quickly turn into the flip side of it will be the student saying, this teacher hates me, they never give me any corrections. It's like, okay, but if we flip to the other side, is the teacher going to say, you have a rotten attitude and you never take any of the corrections I give you? And if that is, I had a conversation with a young student recently where I said, I was like, while we're talking about this, I want you to think about what reason I could possibly have to make this up out of the blue. I don't think you're taking my corrections. And that reeks of an attitude problem to me. Why would I think that? Of what possible benefit could that be to me? And why am I having this conversation with you right now? It might not feel like it, but it's actually because I care. I think you're talented. I think you have potential. But if you don't take a teacher's corrections, that is going to affect your future. And since I think you have potential, I'm going out on a limb here and I'm telling you that it appears to me that you have an attitude problem. And if that's not the case, I'd love to hear why it's not the case. But I've been teaching you for 3 days now. And for all 3 days, I've thought that was the case. So yeah, I think I'm rambling again, frambling. How you take or don't take a correction can absolutely affect your teacher's opinion of you. Something else to be cautious of there is that opinion of you can last a long time. Negative opinions are much harder to undo than positive ones.
Can you talk
you
about
know,
that a little bit?
I'm sorry, did you say, can we talk about that a little bit?
No, can you? I mean, I just remember like when Sam was, I don't know, 13, 14, the thing you told him about like, you need to watch your behavior because it's a small community and this can follow you for a long time. And I mean, I think you kind of kicked him in the rear a little bit, which was great, but he needed it. I think people don't always think about like how things behavior when they're 13 or 14 years old might affect things 4, 5, 6 years down the road.
Yeah. I mean, I always thought Sam was a very respectful young man. So I think we were doing a consult or a mentoring session or something. And
Yeah,
and
and you weren't saying he was being a brat, but I think it really stuck with him that like
don't be a
make
punk.
sure yeah, don't be a punk. And he had teachers at San Francisco. He had a teacher when he was in level 5 who said the same thing. Stay humble and don't be a jerk. And I think that advice really stuck with him.
Yeah, because, especially if you're having some success, right? You're doing well. Maybe you've got a few like competition wins under you, or you've gotten some scholarships at summer intensives and you think you're hot stuff. Maybe you've got an Instagram following and people are just texting you like, you're the most amazing dancer I have ever seen, and you're 14. And so that goes to your head in a different way.
And now, time for a quick ad break.
We are now welcoming reviews of year round ballet school programs on Ballet Help Desk, whether it's a full time program, after school, a conservatory, or a company affiliated school. We welcome all of them. If your dancer has been part of a program, please consider sharing your experience. Imagine there is a family out there right now trying to make an important decision, and your insight could help them feel more confident about their next step. Reviews are completely anonymous, and it takes just a few minutes to complete and let everyone learn all about the good, the bad, and everything in between.
Now, back to the episode.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, can you talk a little bit about that? Like how your reputation maybe follows you a little?
Well, and funnily enough, I have to be careful on talking about this because I've been guilty of it. If I am trying to be self-aware, there are a few people out there that really don't like me, and I think that they were the problem and they would think that I was the problem. So, I think there are more people out there that like me that don't. I don't know, I'm stacking up a lot of folks on one side right now, but, like, it's hard to be a person to wants to try and live by some principles sometimes. I think that's the world as a whole. There are times when you really should, dig your heels in and stand your ground on something if you feel it's morally right to do so. But generally speaking, it is far, far better to get along with people. And I remember that talk with Sam and you guys asking for advice, and my number one piece of advice was don't be a punk because it really is a really small world, the dance world and a ballet world within the dance world. I mean, I can't even pretend to know the dance world. Sometimes I feel like I know a lot of people in the ballet world, and then other times I'm like, I don't know anybody. But, you know, the ballet world does tend to talk to each other, especially these days. So, as a young dancer that is going to go out into the ballet world and into the job fair, you know what I mean? Going from one company to another, you should probably know that they will probably call your old bosses and say, hey, how was this kid? Were they good? Were they bad? Like, why would they be wanting to leave? Why did you fire them if you were fired? And if you're the person who got fired, you're going to have to make a compelling argument why the place fired you was wrong. So, I mean, and everybody sort of knows each other in the industry. It's usually, it's not 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, it's two max. So a bad reputation can follow you. And if you are here again, distribution being uneven because there are fewer guys and even fewer talented guys. Punk guys get more chances because a
Yeah.
company, especially the smaller ones, will always need a guy. So they're willing to say, okay, it didn't work out there. And I heard you were a bit of a punk, but I'm willing to take a chance on you've learned your lesson and you'll be better here. Now that from a one standpoint, that's good, right? Give a person a second chance and not hold them accountable for every mistake for the rest of their life, as long as they're, you know, repentant. But it's because the competition is fiercer for women, then probably it's a little bit more difficult for a woman that's been labeled a problem or an attitude to find gainful employment. So
Yeah. Can we talk about that? Like, you hear stories all the time about these guys that are just kind of awful, but yet they stay employed. How does that happen?
well, I don't think they stay employed long term as much as the stories would suggest. They keep getting rehired and then fired again, I think. I think that happens a fair amount and vastly more with guys than with women. So, yeah, you're right. There are a bunch of punk guys that I think it's almost entirely a competition numbers thing. I think there are just as many really respectful, wonderful young men out there and absolute professional artists that want to work their butts off all the time. So blaming the gender, I'll defend my gender a little bit on that. But there are a bunch of them that thinks they're the second coming and. 3 companies later in 4 years, they're. I won't knock the gig life too much or anything, but it's just like you're now running around doing the same 3 potatoes for a gala that you've done for the last 4 years and you don't have health insurance. Like, tell me you like the freedom all you want, but you, that's got to be a tough life. And though there are plenty of problems with company life, there's a fair amount of stability that can be had relative to our industry. So I've known quite a few professional men that bounced from company to company, and eventually they were basically unemployable because when if you're a competent director and you see 3 companies in 5 years, you're probably going to ask the question, "Why?" And if you're a competent director in the United States, you probably know most of the other competent directors in the United States and a few incompetent ones as well. So you're gonna make the phone call. "That guy was with you for 2 years. How was it?" "Ugh, only did what he wanted to do, showed up to rehearsals when he wanted to show up and blah, blah, blah." And, I don't know, maybe he's better now, but he's really talented, but he was a bit of a problem. That reputation will follow you. So careful out there, kids. A hard working reputation will also ingratiate you to the right people. If we go at it from a positive, it's just like everyone that knows Lauren loves her and speaks very highly of her, and her directors and ballet masters and ballet mistresses and stuff like that have adored her and at times even protected her from people that didn't like her and kind of came for her and stuff. Like, shout out to Lourdes Lopez on that note. She was wonderful to Lauren, and I won't go into details, but at a certain point in time, she stood between Lauren and someone that was writing a nasty email about her and trying to like get her in trouble and stuff. And Lauren was like, "Go right to hell." Like she didn't say that, but because she's a class act, she said what she said was very classy and wonderful. And really probably put that person to shame. But Lauren's attitude and hard work, work ethic, and kindness and stuff, it ingratiated her to those people, and they were willing to go, out of their way to help her in whatever capacity. Lauren is a good example of this, that like Lauren being extremely talented was one thing, right? But Lauren's capacity for making corrections was like sun shining on somebody. You could see the stager or the ballet mistress or whoever it was working with her. They give her a correction. It gets this much better right then and there. And the person who just gave them the correction, they just go, "I made that happen." You know what I mean? It's like it just like it was they got to be a part of her and they got to do something wonderful themselves. When you give a correction to a really talented person and they make that correction and that step just gets better, and then everybody around, if you're in front of a room of dancers and everyone goes woo, something like that, like dude, you as the person that just gave the correction, oh, they like that's a huge ego boost, and it's a huge like mark of respect that you do the correction automatically, and then to bonus it with like it worked. It's a miraculous feeling when you are a teacher and you correct all day, right? Like right now as a ballet master, and right now I'm mostly choreographing, so it's like I'm not really correcting all that much, but like you'll dole out 3, 4, 500 corrections in a day easily. Just this, and 3 of them hit big. Everything makes it like mostly better, right? But it's like some of them are difficult and they have to work on it for a long time. But you'll give them that one magical correction that makes them float 5 pirouettes on point and roll down ever so silky smooth. That's a freaking fantastic feeling as a teacher. So if you're if you're an addict for that sort of thing and are just constantly fighting for that feeling, and then you're like giving a really talented youngster a correction and they just go like, "Oh, well, to heck with it then," you know? So
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about that line, right? That line of ballet is hierarchical, right? There's a lot of reverence that's supposed to happen that is an upward reverence. There's just you walk in the room, there's an automatic respect.
yes.
You're
Okay.
supposed to have
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
automatic respect, and that respect for the front of the room, respect for the pianist, respect for the artistic director, respect for the choreographer. Like there's just supposed to be that like given when you walk in the room.
In point of fact, you're supposed to have respect for the room and the space, which is kind of a hard one to understand, but it's definitely a part of it, especially to some people that are old school that just like, you
Okay,
don't
hold
walk
on.
in this
Wait,
room with sneakers on and stuff like that. So
hold on. Talk to me about that.
it's almost religious. It's sacred ground when you walk into the studio. To a lot of people, there's like this.
Talk to me about this mindset. Because I think a lot of parents just don't know about it, and a lot of students don't know about it. And because oral tradition is passed down that way, like if you don't have dancer parents that teach you that this is your sanctuary and this is your church and this is like sacred space, you don't really know. Would some people consider that disrespect when you don't show up with like your hair done or all those things, like respect for the space, respect for what we're doing here? Like talk to me about that, what that actually means, because you're the first person to ever really say this to us in like clear, plain English.
Well, now probably if we put this podcast out there, then we'll get a lot of comments about it. You know what I mean? Just but like if old school ballet people listen to our podcast, if they haven't
Yeah,
had
they
anything
do.
like that yet. But like there's just, I don't know that I always treated it or do still maybe to this day with the proper reverence. This is something I'm guilty of. I love it. I love the studio. Oh god, it's like coming back into the studio on Monday and getting back to steps and counts as opposed to all the other business of running ballet. Like the beauty is back. Like it's a wonderful feeling. I'm back in the studio where I belong, where I want to be. But because we take our thing so freaking seriously, it rises above a job. It's not an occupation. You know what I mean? It's a calling. It's a thing that you, as Balanchine said, I don't want dancers who want to dance. I want dancers that have to dance, right? Or must dance, whatever the direct quote is. The balancing people are going to kill me. But the people that are like, we don't make any money. You're not in this for the freaking money. The best paid dancers on the planet are relatively poor. Like it's just compared to other industries, it's not a lot of money at all. You know what I mean? So like you do it for the love of it. And because it is something that only a very few people get to do. And so many people love it with all their heart and soul. So many tears are shed over this freaking thing every day, every darn day, at every level, from training to pre-professional to company to principal dancer, shedding tears over this regularly because it means that much to you. And then someone walks in and like, just whatever, this is just a room. You know what I mean? It's like the no, the man, this is to a lot of people, this is my church. This is where I come to bear my heart and soul. This is everything I've ever wanted. And now I'm here. You will darn well treat it with the respect that I have for it, or I take it personally, which goes a bit far, but are there people out there that get pissed if you don't walk in with your hair done already and stuff? Yeah. But then you'll find some certain really strict schools. Like I was teaching for the summer at CP by B one time, and one of their teachers pulled a girl out of class because she had nail polish on. And it's like they had like clear or nude colored nail polish only, and that was all they allowed. And like she had like bright red. It was like this was just like they were fanatical about the rules. You know what I mean? And the hair has to be a certain way, and point shoes, and like people are not messing around with their uniform requirements. Like you'd better not have black tights with holes in them. That'll kick you straight out of class. You know what I mean? This is pink tights and no holes in them. Like so. There's all these sort of rules that add up to, and it's also some of them seem arbitrary, but they're also sort of all of them add up to a way of working and a discipline that hard to find fault in. Some of the rules are rather restrictive, and so especially for something that's supposed to be artistic. And I broke a lot of those rules, and I didn't really get them, and I didn't really understand them. So I'm probably not the best person to defend them. But I did find, if I didn't find the studio necessarily sacred, like in a way that like you could do this and you couldn't do that, I definitely found it to be relatively like spiritual. I loved being in the studio. I loved dancing every day. I loved taking class. I, for the most part, loved most of the rehearsal process. And I think looking back on it now too, I wasted a lot of time thinking about all the wrong crap. Cause like I've said it on this podcast before, and it's not meant to be a knock at them, but dancers love to complain. It's just like you get 30, 40 people in a room that are highly critical of everything, standing in front of a mirror, being highly critical of themselves all day, and you expect them not to turn their critical attention towards everything in front of them. Just bananas. So dancers end up complaining a lot because they're just hypercritical. And then, now, now, not to change the subject, but now as a rehearsal director, it's like my job to field a lot of those complaints, which is interesting. Then it's interesting, since I haven't really particularly talked all that much, and I'm rambling again and changing direction, but like I haven't talked all that much on this podcast about like sort of the experience of being a ballet master or rehearsal director. One thing I didn't expect was the sheer amount of patience that it takes.
I believe it is called karma, Fran.
A little bit, yeah. I got to deal with like people that remind me way too much of myself. It's like, oh, that young man's having to cry like a meltdown over there. I got it. I got this one. Yeah. Yeah.
That
Interesting.
is funny.
That's an
Okay,
interesting.
so then because you are somebody who is pretty known for being outspoken, right? And you want your dancers to have a voice and you want that two-way communication. If I recall you saying to our kids like I need feedback, like back and forth. We let's talk about it, right? And you've always seemed to like that back and forth. So how do you find that line of advocating for yourself but also respecting the well-intentioned earned authority in the front of the room?
Starting point there would probably be the earned authority. So long as that exists, then I think everything's going to go smoother. If it's sort of, I don't think there's a terrible amount of unearned authority, but there's probably more misused authority. So how do you find the line? Well, time and place will matter if you're advocating for yourself. If you really want to advocate for yourself, pick the right time and place. A meeting with your director or ballet master, ballet mistress, whatever, would be after rehearsal, before rehearsal, something like that would be a better time and place than during rehearsal. During rehearsal is probably not the time to make a big you advocating for you type of thing. Flip side of that is if we're talking about you're in a situation and you're well, like today, I'm creating a new section for a ballet that I did last season that we're doing again. There's a section of 8 ladies that we're working on today, and I'm creating as we're going along. And when I choreograph, I tend to spit a lot of stuff out, and then I'll stand and stare at them in a formation for like 2 minutes, trying to envision where that formation could go. And then I have to listen to the music like 10 times in a row, like the same 8 count. And then I'll spit something out real quick, and then we'll do it 2 times. And what I spit out, I'll just kind of do, and they have to kind of catch it. So it ends up being unclear. And I rely on our dancers. Like there's this group of 8 ladies, and in particular, there are 3 or 4 of them that are just like they're people in our company that I rely on to raise their hand and say, when we're doing this step, are the arms coming first or are they staying out? Like, are we doing the balancing on demi point or point? And all like, show me some options. Like, okay, here's point, here's demi point, do point. Thanks for pointing it out. Like, can we go over this? I don't think our arms and our head are all in the same place when we cross. Like, things like that, like using your voice in that way. That's what makes the ballet world go around to me, man. Like, and there's a shout out to those really strong, intelligent anchors of the corps de ballet world that make everything run smooth and catch all the stuff that we can't catch, because trying to catch a whole corps of say 16 swans, everybody's head, everybody's arm, you know what I mean? Crowd, I tell them all the time, like, we're going to do a quick run of this at like 80%. And can we crowdsource the problems, please? Everybody keep your brains active. And when you come across something that seems unclear, remember it. And then afterwards, we'll do our notes session, and I'll have my notes, and I'll like people will raise their hand and like ask for clarity on a step. It's great. So using your voice in that capacity, again, as long as you're respectful, there are ways to do it and ways to not. But everybody, I don't think I need to like itemize that for the ballet world. Like, when you're being rude and not. You know what I mean? If your intention is to catch the ballet master out and like point out something that they didn't get, when you're doing that. If you have a genuine question, that's never been a problem for me. And every once in a while, if someone gets a little out of place with how much they're asking or asking the wrong way, it's relatively easy to shut down as respectfully as possible without making it a big deal. But generally speaking, I rely on our dancers to catch things that I don't catch. And maybe I'm just not detail oriented enough, but also it's a really nice way to catch a lot of information if there are 8 ladies thinking about it instead of just me. So
Well, I feel like that can really apply to class too. If you're in class and either things are unclear or whatever, I think there is a skill to be learned on how to find your voice respectfully and ask those kinds of things, because I do think there's a lot of fear that goes through ballet schools, right? It's like this culture of fear of like, I don't want to say anything. I don't want them to be mad at me. Like there's all this pleaser attitude in those kinds of things. And so I think it's students have to learn how to find their voice, and so I think taking those baby steps and figuring out ways to have those clarifying conversations, because I do think that that is something we hear about a lot, that students struggle to say anything out of fear.
yeah, and we from our end, we teachers can do a little bit better job of making sure that we create an environment where they feel like they are able to ask a question. Like I said, I think the trust and the relationship between the teacher and the student needs to be built properly for that to exist. You know what I mean? Like that one class I was telling you about where they could all ask me anything, and like sometimes we talked about things for a while. Sometimes it wasn't even about like that class that we were taking. It would be about the school or the company and something they were all in a company rehearsal and something they saw. And is this common or is that like, and we'd talk about it and stuff, right? But they earned that through respectful action constantly. And also the usual respectful ways to interject still exist. It's not like ballet has a completely separate set of rules. You can still raise your hand. That'll work just fine. And like recently we were teaching at this other place and I was teaching these little ones. It was really funny. Your podcast recently with Peter Stark. I love the thing that he said about like teaching different levels and everybody sort of knowing where their zone is because it's a really, really rare person that can teach everybody. Well, I was teaching the little ones and that is not my zone. And I'm a dad, so like I can be kind of funny dad and I can sit there and get on my hands and knees and press their foot into the floor for a tendu and like try and do all of that stuff. But it's not, that's not where I belong teaching, right? I'm not particularly good at that. And there was this one little girl she was really funny, but she was also she just kept talking all the time, like to me, and she would ask questions, just blurt out a question. And I was being patient and patient and patient. And about an hour into the class, she had done this maybe 15, 20. Right? So it's like when I'm saying I'm being patient, I didn't snap at her at all, and I didn't say anything after the 3rd time. I gave her some leeway because then the other kids too would ask questions and stuff, and then eventually I went, "Okay, hey, listen, everybody, there's way too much talking, and frankly, though I want you to ask questions, there's too many questions without raising your hand or asking if you can ask so." And then she did it one more time, and I went, "What did we say about raising our hands?" She went, "Oh, so blah, blah," and then she just kept going. Wait, wait. You raise your hand and then I call on you. And she's sitting
And
there
then the
with her like
jumping happens.
just quivering with like needing to say this thing. Like this thing was like felt like a cartoon when the words were going to actually come out of her mouth in these giant bubble letters. So then I call on her. She had some question, whatever. But then also like at one point she raised her hand and I went, "What?" And she goes, "Can we do chaînés?" I went, "No. I decide what to do in class. I'm the teacher. You're the student. You do what you're told, and I tell you what to do." She goes, "Okay." And I was like, "Do you understand?" She's like, "Yeah, I get it. I get it." And so she went back, and then like a little while later, she goes, hand up. And she's like, "Can we do changements?" I went, "What did I say last time?" And it's like that you decide what we're gonna do. And it's like, "Okay, thanks." And I was like, "Okay, now one last thing." And we had like 15 minutes to go in class, and I went, "You get one more question today, only one. So if you want to ask another question, you better make it a good one because it's your last one." So that was fun, and she was funny, and she got it, and we all like I make sure when we do something like that that I involve the other student, not in putting her down, but like making sure we're all involved in it, so it's not just calling her out in front of a class. She was hilarious.
How
It's a
old
fun,
how old was she?
8, that range.
Yeah.
I thought she was hilarious and I really liked her. And I liked her enough to make sure she knew she needed to stop doing what she was doing. And my
So
correction to her and adjustment in her behavior did not diminish my fondness of her at all. She was a wonderful little girl and she's going to do great. But it was funny. She was just kind of constantly asking, and she was constantly asking if we could do something other than we were doing. Like, no.
That is so funny. I'd love that.
getting kind of back on the reputation thing. And we talked about this a little bit with like the guys who kept like getting fired and then getting rehired. But I would argue my son has seen both men and women they may be great with the artistic staff, but they're not so great with their peers. And, at what point does talent supersede behavior with your peers? Like, can a
No.
student progress and can a student stay like, can a student get a job if the artistic staff might think they're great, but their peer group is like, "You're not fantastic to be around."
Well, of course they can get a job because your peer group doesn't have any contracts for you. The artistic director has the contracts and stuff. So if you're a jerk and the word of that hasn't reached the director's ears or they don't care, I mean, to be really blunt about it, is it necessary to be a nice person in order to be a great dancer? No, there are lots of great dancers out there that are jerks. I know a few of them, and they're not well liked by their peers. There's some famous ones, some names you'd recognize, and I'm gonna hold it at that. So can you be employed and keep going and even be highly successful and a star? Yeah. Do you want to? Absolutely not. This freaking thing of ours is so disappointing on a constant basis, and the only thing that makes it okay and livable is your friends and your fellow dancers that have been where you are and understand and can commiserate and empathize and sympathize. I mean, like jerk dancers, there are a bunch of them out there. And this is, I think this was also one of my main points to Sam was like, you want to live a healthy, happy life while you're doing this extremely weird thing. You know what I mean? Like it's an absolutely extreme life and you want some sense of normalcy in it. You want really good friend groups and good support systems for the times that you are going to have that are really heartbreaking and really difficult. And your friends are you are going to rely on them. I can tell you that for a fact. Lauren and I are still as close to our friends from Philly that we danced with as anyone on earth. There is zero diminished affection every time we see them every couple years. We hug for an uncomfortably long hug if you're going to be witnessing it. You know what I mean? Because we just feel like I'm welling up just thinking about the last time I was in Philly hugging my friends. It took us like 10 minutes to do the hugs when we first saw each other, you know what I mean? Because every person is just like, like, and I don't know. We have some really nice friends here in Indy, and our neighborhood is wonderful, and our neighbors are wonderful, and there's these like there's this group of people that all have like there are three little girls that I walk to the bus every morning with our golden retriever, just full suburbia, me and Lucy and our two neighbor girls that are all in the same grade in the same class getting on the same bus. It's wonderful. And I don't know that they will ever be what this group of friends that I see like once every 2 years now is because we went through this freaking thing together. We shared the highest of highs and I won't say the lowest of lows because that's way too dramatic, right? But like we shared something extreme and we held each other and consoled each other through really difficult times during that thing. And we also got to be there and pop a bottle of champagne backstage when someone achieved something extraordinary. It was wonderful. We ran the gambit together. And if you don't have that, is this worth it? What, for the applause? Like the audience's applause? Like that's great. It's wonderful. But the first run of if you're doing something featured, if any other freaking principal dancers out there or soloists, anybody that's ever done a featured part, check my reasoning on this, man. The applause of the audience is nothing compared to the first run you do in front of the company. If you do a really great run in front of the company in a rehearsal and they burst into applause, that's the best applause in our business. Your fellow dancer sitting there watching you do something. Lauren and I did a run of diamonds, like our first run of diamonds in front of the company. And the day before, Zach and Julie had done this epically beautiful run of diamonds in front of the whole company. It was like they were first cast and we were second cast, and they went first. Like it was like a Thursday or something. And like they did theirs, and everybody burst into applause. It was so beautiful. Lauren and I just burst into applause. Everybody, it was epically beautiful. And it made me nervous because I'm a naturally competitive person. It's like it shouldn't have been that way, but it was like Lauren and I are going tomorrow, and it's like it's trying to follow freaking Jimi Hendrix. You know what I mean? It's just like they did this unbelievably beautiful run. And Lauren and I went the next day, and we were just different. And I had the privilege of partnering Lauren in that freaking pot of dough, and the whole room burst into this huge applause. And like, if I'm remembering correctly, like Jamel came and gave me this one of those really epically long hugs with like tears in his eyes. It was just like, that's the most beautiful thing ever. Like, it was just, I'm trying to not brag about it, but it's just like, when you have people around you that love you and respect you, and you love and respect in a way that like only their hard work and expertise and unbelievable talent can build, and they think you did something great. They applaud what you've done. And you need those friends to have that sort of reassurance. Because then the next day, the next week, we went out in front of 15, 1,700 people at the Academy of Music, and it was nothing because the hard run was already done. The hard respect was already earned. And if you're not a nice person and you don't have that, not meaning to be judgy, but what do you have then? Nothing else in the career, no other accolades meant what those accolades meant. And I've seen people do runs where it was a polite splattering of applause versus like you could tell It's the same thing sort of as a teacher. Like the other day, I gave a class before we came back to work. It was a maintenance class. No, I don't know. It was just something about that day. Everybody was in a good mood, and I was like, I want to try and give a really good class. Not that I don't try and give a good class sometimes, but I was like, I want to really try. I'm going to try some different combinations and try and move them around more. Try and do the stuff. And it's like when I wrapped up class, they did real applause. Sometimes it's like, okay, good class, everybody, and then we're going about our day, and that's fine because that's the way it is. It's a freaking, Thursday or something like that, but like that day, the dancers that took my class, like there was a bit of a swell of real applause. Thanks for that, by the way, dancers. That made me feel good. So- and all of that goes together. You know what I mean? The respect you have for each other, the respect you have for the studio, the respect you have for our art form, your fellow dancers, all of that goes together. It's sort of a cumulative thing, and that's maybe why we find the space so religious, if you will, and why it should be taken so seriously. Because it's not normal and it's not found other places. You can only find it there. So treat it with the reverence it deserves.
Fran, I think that's a beautiful place to leave it. Thank you once again.
Yeah,
Great episode.
absolutely. It was very nice to see you too.
Good to see you too.
You
If you're enjoying the Ballet Help Desk podcast, please take a moment and subscribe, rate, and drop us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. And while you're at it, don't forget to swipe that auto download button so you never miss an episode. Thanks so much for your support. Until next time, the Help Desk is now closed.